All right. Look, thanks, team. So this morning we ended up taking over time for the transport and infrastructure deep dive, and unfortunately we had to push back this briefing, but we've taken some time back, and so it's really great to be able to put the team up in front of us to continue that briefing. And so I'd like to welcome Steve Gibling, who is the Executive Director, Strategy, Engagement and Capability, to present to us.
Cool, thank you. I can assure you I won't be as exciting as my infrastructure colleagues this morning, but we will try and entertain you at 4:10 this afternoon for the next half an hour as I take you through a bit of a trip through my group. Just want to also acknowledge, whilst I was away, the awesome work that Kath did in both enabling the induction but also then pulling this together. So thank you very much for that, Kath. This is a relatively new group in council. We're entirely a shared service with a few exceptions, and I'm going to touch on those exceptions a little bit. But in terms of the team, they are listed up there. So in terms of head of strategy and performance, that's Kath's primary role. The head of people, you will have seen Kylie Hansen walking around the offices and in the back this afternoon or this morning. John Knight, who has given you a briefing on health and safety responsibilities, and will be doing a little bit more work with you in the coming weeks and month. The head of governance, legal and risk is Julie Hands. And you may or may not have seen Sarah. Sarah's covering a couple of jobs at the moment, which is the comms manager and the marketing manager. We're doing a little bit of a refresh in that space. This team's been pulled together. When I first started about a year and a half ago, I just had the people and health and safety function, and over the last year and a half have had the privilege of collecting a few other functions, primarily the legal and risk, and that has been a big focus for us as an organisation as we really try and build up the framework and the mechanics of local government and really try and put some rigour behind how we do things around here. I know you've seen the delegations documentation, and we'll give you a bit of an update on the policies. You know, these are all the mechanical things that local government have to be really good at, and it's our day-to-day bread and butter job. And my team look after the process. They oil the wheels of the organisation to do our job better for our communities. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, and then at each department stop there'll be a chance for a quick question and answer. But again, I'm going to fly through this relatively quickly, but I'm going to touch on what I think are some really key outcomes or outputs from my team that enable the rest of the organisation to perform better, more efficiently and effectively. So welcome any questions or concerns that you might have you want to share. And I've got a tiger.
Strategy and performance.
We have evolved. Do you want to
Here we go.
keep going? Yeah.
Someone pressed the wrong button. They blame someone. So like I've mentioned, we are an enabler for our operational performance. Our people team, we attract people, we help our leaders recruit people, we help them get in and onboard them into the organisation, we help them build into our culture. We support our leaders through enabling an engagement survey, and we then support our leaders through a lot of learning and development. So we're putting a lot of focus on our leadership team at the moment, because I think any good organisation needs great leaders at every level of our organisation. So we're really rolling some leadership development out. In terms of health, safety and wellbeing, again, we are the glue that keeps our people safe. We want to get people home every day, and we also want to look after our customers. And in Denise's area in particular, we've got 500,000 visitors to the aquatic centre, 500,000 plus visitors to Atiatia, and we've got many hundreds of thousands of other people using our spaces across the year. And so what we're doing is making sure that we're providing a safe space for our staff. We also look after you and support you and your wellbeing, and we also make sure that our community can go home safe as well. From a legal governance and risk, this is the area that Sharon's really pushed us into in the last year and a half, is really make sure that our policies and our legal frameworks are really tight, that we don't have policies or bylaws that are out of date, and if we do, we've got a plan to fix them, and we communicate that through our Audit and Risk Committee. Our Lagoima functions, we've got some regulatory and legislative requirements that we have to follow up, and we also support some of the mechanical things around codes of conduct. We make sure the standing orders are in place. We do all of those things to enable you to do your job so we can do our job. From a communication and engagement point of view, we also have the storytelling function of our council. And I know, and having sat around the community board in the last sort of year and a half as well, I know how important telling our story and telling the work of our community, or to our community of council, is critical. And I know that's an area that we are really trying to improve, and we've got a bit of a plan in place for how that's going to work. But again, we're really keen to hear from you about how we might do that better. We also, in that communications engagement piece, we have to do a lot of engagement. There are some requirements on us through the Local Government Act. We've got our own significance and engagement policy, and ultimately you're the decision makers as to when we consult and how we consult with the community. And we're looking forward to working with you in the next 3 years on that. And finally, in Kath's area, the strategy and performance space, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the future Selwyn and area planning responsibilities, and I'm going to touch a little bit on the local government mechanics, which is around our annual plan, our annual report, and our long-term plan functions. These are going to be some big decisions that you will make on behalf of our community that will endure across your training and for the next 10 to 30 plus years. Love a good budget story on FTE. We're entirely general rate funded as a group, with this small exception of some of our biodiversity work in the strategy and performance space. But that's a quick snapshot of what our group looks like and what the balance of staffing looks like at the moment. So we have an average size communications engagement team. We've done a review. We've compared ourselves to some of our neighbouring councils. We're about average in terms of the size of this team, but when you put that in the context of one of the fastest growing districts and the expansion and the rapid development of services, I think this team do quite a lot for the resource we have. In terms of governance, legal and risk, we're made up of a group of, as you've seen Julie's team, we've got the governance team over here, we've got some lawyers, and we've got a risk manager. And that is that's probably one of the newest teams that this council's adopted, especially that legal team, and they've produced some really good wins for this organisation and for the budget this year and from the previous year. We've got a relatively sizable people team. Obviously, because of the size of the organisation, we have a recruitment team, we have a learning and development team, we have a business partnering function, so that's the support going into our leadership across the organisation. We've got a relatively small health, safety and wellbeing team. They don't own health, safety and wellbeing, they facilitate the ownership and the conversation to every staff member, in particular through the leadership in our organisation. And they help do the reporting. They keep the mechanics of that health, safety and wellbeing function alive for us. And that goes through to our Audit and Risk Committee meeting every time they catch up. And then we've got the strategy and performance team, and Kath's going to touch a little bit more on that. In terms of the budget, there's probably, there's a few numbers that stand out, but I want to touch on a couple of them because I think these speak to the type of business model and the approach that we have. And I'm going to touch on the other expenses and operating projects under the engagements and communication function. And you're looking at those two numbers and going, they're relatively big numbers, but when you consider that that's all of our advertising, printing and publication costs, and that also includes within that group, that is also the health, safety and wellbeing components. When you think about the amount of communications and the publications that we do as an organisation for the community that's growing and the size of changes that we're making as a council. That's where the bulk of that expenditure occurs. The second number is in the consulting, legal and professional services, and that's under the governance and legal and risk. And that is one of the changes we've made this year is we've consolidated all of our legal, external legal expenditure under this group. That wasn't the case when Sharon or I got here, and what we saw was some expenditure that was, I wouldn't say not controlled, but there wasn't the level of oversight needed or the level of expertise. And I'm mindful I'm speaking to a couple of lawyers in the room at the moment as well, around asking the right question and making sure you're getting the right answer back and you're getting good value for money. So what Julie and the team have been doing is really building up our capability to not only answer the questions ourselves with the people like Dom and the team who are now here, but also making sure if we do need to go to external legal that there's absolute value, because we can't answer it all because the risk or the consequence of getting it wrong means we need a third party to look at this. And so the team have shifted that number, and I think we're certainly going to come really close to hitting that number, which will be a significant win for us as an organisation by getting down to that point. So that's a quick overview of the numbers, and we're just going to go into a real quick, and this is the department by department conversation that we had. And so I'm going to lean over to Kath, and Kath's going to give a quick overview of the strategy, and then I'm going to touch a little bit on the performance delivery.
Okay, so there's 5 key activities within, functions in their own right within strategy and performance. The strategy team, which the key role is really the implementation of Future Selwyn, Waikirikiri Ki Tua, which was adopted in October last year, and sets the strategic vision for our district. Involvement in the Greater Christchurch Partnership Work Programme, in particular around the spatial planning and also the Housing Action Plan, and work within the Area Plan Programme, which we'll talk about a bit soon. I also talked to you a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, around the growth modelling work that team does, as well as supporting submissions that Council puts forward. Other parts of the strategy and performance team include transport, and so we have a key role in working with the Regional Transport Committee and working as part of the group on the Regional Land Transport Plan. That's a key plan for the region in which we come together and we set priorities for investment that then gets funded through the National Fund. Other key areas that we're involved in transport are around the transport plan through the Greater Christchurch Partnership, and also the early stages and the business cases around MRT. We also have an small urban design function, and the urban design team, a lot of their work is around providing advice on resource consents, and also providing advice and review in terms of some of our more active projects like the Lincoln Town Centre. We have an environmental function within strategy and performance, and their work is around biodiversity, also around energy reduction. And just last year we adopted our emission reduction plan, which seeks to reduce greenhouse gas emission targets, and we're actively working on audits of our own buildings in council at the moment. Then we have the performance team, which I also spoke to you about a week ago about some of the key planning documents that we oversee around the long-term plan, the annual plan and the annual report, and you'll have the annual report coming to you in the next week. The performance team is also involved in performance reporting and monitoring across the council. That's an area that we're looking at, sort of how we improve at the moment across the council, in particular how we report on our non-financial measures, and that's looking at what we've identified in our long-term plan and reporting on that regularly. So this slide talks to a little bit about the area plan program, and as I mentioned, Waikirikiriki to a Future Selwyn was adopted last year, and look, there was a huge amount of work that happened behind the scenes. It was before my time, but in working with communities to develop this strategy, and it sets out the strategic direction for the district for the long term. At the same time as doing that piece of work, we've been working on the area plan program of work, and that is looking and making sure that we have area plans in place right across the district. That's quite a significant piece of work. It's also a really important piece of work because in developing the area plans, which are detailed spatial plans for areas, setting out your opportunities, constraints, looking at transport, infrastructure, housing, economic development and community needs. But what they do is they'll give us certainty in terms of the decisions we need to make through our long-term plan and funding, but also provide more certainty to the private sector in terms of what's happening in our district and where they can make their own investment decisions, and also central government in terms of facilities they might provide in the area. So there's 3 area plans underway. One is a new area plan for the Eastern Selwyn area, and that really picks up on a lot of the work that has been done through Greater Christchurch Partnership, and also 2 area plans, Ellesmere and Melbourne. Now we do have existing area plans for those areas, and so it's updating and reviewing those. There was some engagement that was undertaken earlier in the year with the community, and we had a great response. You can see up on that slide that the number of people who connected with the various platforms that we operated during that, and I know some of you were involved in that, which is great. So we got a lot of comments. And we also, a lot of drop-ins. That information now the team are using as they develop up these area plans. We expect to come and talk to you a bit more in detail about the specifics of each of the area plans in coming weeks.
Thanks. I've just, in your pack, and we'll make this available online too, is that I've just gone through, essentially Kath's done a great job of summarising the last 2 slides I've just gone across. I think for us, in terms of opportunities in this group, the alignment of our spatial planning requirements with the area-based approach is one of our big opportunities as an organisation that you'll get to direct and decide on over the next 12 to 18 months. Yeah. And so that's, I think, a big opportunity for us collectively. We've seen and you've heard about the Department of Internal Affairs and the government's benchmarking. That ties into our own corporate performance reporting. We don't need to wait for the government to set these things up. We actually need to be doing that better ourselves, and so that's the work that Kath's mentioned around our ongoing improvement around our internal reporting to you and our community. There are some other smaller opportunities like the Eco Partnership Fund. Certainly in terms of challenges, the top 2, I'm not going to touch on those. I think the biggest one and the elephant in the room for us is the degree of change that's coming at us from central government. And that's us as a collective local government sector and us as a council. Not every council is the same, not every community is the same, and so what we've got to do and what your team have to do for you is they have to go through every one of these bits of reform and legislative change, and they need to explain it to you, they need to analyse what the impact is for this council is, and then they need to tell you what the consequence of this change happening or not happening. So the conversation you had this morning about the RMA, times that by 30. And so we're collectively going to be quite busy, especially in the next 12 months. That's probably the quick run through of that group. So I'm just going to pause here, or do you want me to keep going? Yeah.
I wonder whether you keep going, Steve, and we'll do some questions.
Sure.
At the end, and noting there might be further questions, and if people have further questions after your update, we can circulate those through
Cool.
to you.
Keep going. Okay.
But noting that a lot of the stuff that is in here is coming back as briefing papers
Yeah.
and part of our work plan
Yeah.
in the next 6 to 12 months.
So that part of my group is probably the most front-facing and into the community that you'll get, that actually is kind of like the project management approach. So very much is similar to what Tim talked to you about this morning around infrastructure. That's our front-facing, that's how we connect, and this is the work we're doing for our community. The rest is shared services, and I love shared services. I've been in local government for years, and we need these things to work, but I'm going to go through this lot really quickly. You know what a communications engagement team do? They tell the story of what the organisation is doing to its community, so the community understands what value it's getting out of it. They also do a lot of work in supporting our management team around consultation activity, whether that's consultation on the LTP or the long-term plan, whether it's consulting with our communities about the sorts of changes or services they want, or bylaws or policies that we need to put in place. From a marketing point of view, I touched on the work that our team do. I touched on the fact that actually we get so many people through the pool. That pool has a Selwyn Aquatic Centre and the other facilities around our community. They rely on the general rate, but they also rely on user pays and fees. And so what we've got to do is we've got to market and sell ourselves in our community so the community know how to access us. So that's what our marketing team does. They're out there supporting the events, they're supporting our pools, our recreation services. They're telling our story to our community so our community can access us. In terms of supporting that, we've got a digital and design function, a little in-house team that supports all of the top line. And then we've got the media requiries. This is supporting the council, responding to our media as and when we need to. And we have a really tight turnaround. We've got 24 hours we aim for in terms of inquiries. If we can do it quicker, we do. I'm going to touch on the opportunities, and I think we've certainly heard the message around balancing transparency with clarity, and that sounds like an odd statement. We want to be 100% transparent with our community because that's where our money comes from. That's who we're serving. But you think about the quantity of information you've digested this morning, how we put that out into community so that the community, regardless of where they live or who they are, can understand that. It means that the way in which we make that clear and understandable, concise, means sometimes making a really complex message simple is the hardest job. And that's what our team's, I think, good at and getting better at, and that's one of the areas that we're really focusing on improving that, and we're really keen to get your feedback. And you'll see that come through when you approve consultation material and other material that goes out to our community about what we're doing. We're also, we've heard from the community too, we need to get better at proactive communication with our community. We need to get in front of some of these things, and that's one of the focuses for us. The challenges are the challenges for most local government organisations. Consultation overload, we're really mindful of that, and I know the comms team have given you a heads up on what that looks like. A low awareness of all the things that we do. And again, these briefings have been a good window into the things that we do as a council for our community. And also balancing, what's correct and factual information versus what's not. And that takes a little bit of time and effort as well. Righty-ho. This is one of the newer teams, and like I mentioned, it is the new team. This is us tightening up our internal processes to make sure that we are doing all the things our policies say we should be doing, that we've got the right policies in place, that they're referring to the right pieces of legislation, that they're doing all the connection bits to make sure that we're compliant, we're safe, and we're efficient with the effort we put in. So our legal team drives a lot of that through Julie. We've also got the governance team now working in this space. So again, we're tying up all the mechanics of local government, making this place go as fast as we can to support you make decisions for our community. You've heard a little bit about risk, and I'm not going to touch more on that, but you will get a bit more of a detailed workshop and briefing before Christmas. And I understand you've also heard what our internal audit program is, which is driven out of our Audit and Risk Committee, which is meeting next week. Just making sure I'm pressing the right buttons and not getting the line to appear again. So I talked about the benefit of the legal team. The top left-hand box gives you a bit of an indication of the value that that team's creating, or the savings that we are creating for this organisation. And it's that bottom number that we've estimated. They're the problems that this team has fixed, that without them we would have gone to an external legal firm to answer. And we've tried to be relatively conservative, and in the audit and risk briefing or meeting next week, we can talk in more detail about how we've quantified that number, so you get a degree of confidence. So it's not just something I've come up with. But there is some science there based on the lawyer's understanding of how they charge out on 6-minute blocks. It's a relatively small team. We've just added to it because actually we think the more we can get involved in our own internal work, the more problems we can solve internally, the least we're going out to external firms, and then we're only going to them for the high value, high consequence risk matters. And you're getting a sense that we're spending a lot of time in the medium, high and critical area. And the team are doing, I think, a pretty outstanding job in that space. The other success is around Lagoimas, and we, probably maybe 12 months ago, we had an average of about 23 days response time for our Lagoimas, and that was an average. The legal standard was 20 days. Our team have worked really hard, and we're now down to 14 days response time. So we're really trying to respond as quickly and efficiently as we can, and the team are doing, I think, a great job there. In terms of the Ombudsman complaints, the main complaint there is around our refusal to provide information. And you'll see that the adverse findings, which would say that the Ombudsman has said, no, you made the wrong decision, have been 0. So I think 14-0 is a good result in any game you're playing. We're also tracking 179 policies, and that is something that you'll get the pleasure of experiencing over the next wee while as well. Opportunities. I've given my challenge to our legal team, radical transparency. We need to get everything out there as much as we can, as quick as we can, and so we're now proactively putting our Lagoimas out online, so people may not need to ask it. They can just go there first, and if it hasn't been asked, then ask us. Internalising of legal, grabbing value and creating understanding of the way we work saves everyone money, and we get more efficient and effective. And managing our audit actions is one of those big challenges, keeping on top of those and really improving the business and the way we do business. Challenges, reform, the volume of work, especially the volume related to Lagoima, certainly leading into the elections, giggle. There were a few Lagoimas that came in, and we had quite a lot of interest. But that our job is, we want to be really clear that we embrace that. We want people to understand what we're doing. What we've got to do is get more proactive in that space. Legacy processes, everyone's got those. We're dealing with a few things we're trying to unwind and improve. Health, safety and wellbeing, you're going to get a bit more of a deeper dive on this one too. I'm not going to touch on that. Aside to say that this applies as much to you. Our job is to look after you as much as our job is to look after our staff and our community. So if you need any help or if you've got any questions, you know who to ask. We do have a critical risk program. John might have touched on those. I won't go into much more detail. Again, you'll get a bit more of a briefing on this. And people, this is my last group. I've touched on all the things we do. We do the payroll, people data. One of our legacy systems as an organisation is we don't have a great interface between payroll and the people data, and we're trying to improve that because that actually is quite an inefficient system at the moment, but we're working on ways, and Matt from our digital space will give you a bit of an update on how that fits into our digital strategy, and we're focusing on how we do change management better. You'll probably be aware of the numbers here. This is just a quick breakdown of the headcount versus the full-time equivalent and where they sit within the group. We have the PSA as our union. We're negotiating, still in negotiations with them at the moment around the collective pay agreement, and we're hopeful close to a resolution there. In terms of vacancies, we do carry a little bit of a vacancy load at the moment, and you'll see there's a difference between the roles we're actively recruiting and the roles we're not. The roles we're not actively recruiting on is because we're really considering, do we need that role? Do we need a different role? Do we need something a little bit new? Or can we wait? Are we waiting for a leader to turn up to be part of the recruitment? Or can we do this in a different way? And so that's one of the reasons, and you'll see this across most councils and most organisations you'll be familiar with, around you take time to recruit, because once you've employed someone, you've employed someone. And so our team do take time to make sure we make the right call. In terms of turnover rates, you'll see that on the left-hand side down the bottom, this is a group analysis in terms of the resignations per group. The overwhelming majority of the turnover and the resignations sits within the community services and facilities area. And these are our frontline roles. These are the people who are our swim instructors, our lifeguards. These are people who often it's the first job or they're coming into the workforce, and it's a stepping stone for them. The average tenure is around just over a year in that space. So we get, and this figure is not dissimilar to a lot of other councils around the country where your community services have the higher turnover rates. We are also looking at the infrastructure and the development and growth teams. What we see there is actually, and we've looked at the exit data, is what's driving that is not just dissatisfaction. Actually, we've got some really technical and really, really capable and valuable people that other people want. And so in particular, we've seen people go to private consultancy firms because they can actually earn a lot more money in the private sector than they can in the public sector. So we've got multiple drivers there. Our team do a bit of a breakdown on what those drivers are in the Audit and Risk Committee, and we do that publicly to say this is what our exit data is looking like. And we're working on getting more into this data because we certainly want to stop the exit as much as we can. We want to start the stay, and we're looking at how we might do that. And it's a bit of an assessment of how we rank relative to our other peers around the country, either a growth or locally connected to us. So we do pretty well for the services we provide. Opportunities. Attraction of talent for those key roles is probably one of our biggest opportunities, how we get better at recruiting those hard to fill vacancies. Challenges our systems, and with the degree of change, and this is something we've talked to our teams about, is that some of the consequences of fast growing council is that it's continually having to change. I've worked in councils where there is no change or there's no growth, and so it's fairly stable. That's not us, and certainly what we've got to do is find new ways of creating value for our staff and creating opportunities and meaningful opportunities for the work that they do for our community. And getting in front of our workforce planning, we need to get better at that too. And I think that is almost my last slide. Sorry, I'm just going back. And this is how we pay our people. That is my last slide. I think I'm done. I'm 5 minutes over, sorry.
Sorry, Steve, I think because there's been a number of questions around remuneration.
Yeah.
In terms of being asked, where we pay our staff. So do you want to talk to that a little bit more? Or Kath, do you want to explain that a bit more in terms of we are median? Yeah. We're not at the high end.
So the first thing is we assess ourselves not against the private sector, not against all sector. We assess ourselves against the local government sector. So we're public servants, we respect that, and so we value ourselves against every other council in the country. We aim to get, and we certainly we set up for every job there is a pay grade, and we go through strategic pay to do that, and we've got a significant number of grades, and we do job evaluations. We set those jobs in place. We get the job description right. We assess it. That assessment gets put into a grade. That grade then has a band, and then our appointment processes, we can appoint anyone from between 85% to 115%. And so it's the manager's job, based on the relevant experience, qualification and tenure in the work environment, as to where they put that person in, whether it's someone who's shifting up or someone who's coming in from outside with a wealth of experience. So there's a degree of flexibility here, but it all is contained within that band. We don't operate outside of this. And certainly our approval process flags anyone who is proposed to be appointed over 105%. That goes to the boss for awareness and has to have a case with it. So the pay rates are there. We do pay the living wage, and it did increase a bit, but that is important because if you think back to that community services, where the bulk of our roles in that space and our frontliners are paid at those frontline roles, we've got quite a lot of people down at that frontline level. We review our remuneration annually, and we then set the budget that then comes to council for approval annually. Hopefully that's given you a real quick run through of how we take real care and attention around our remuneration.
Cool. Thanks, Steve and Kath. Look, I think we'll go for questions, and then noting that people have been in this room for 8 hours today, and there may be further questions, so please feel free to circulate those after if you need to. But Tracy's up first.
Thanks, Steve. Kath. Radical transparency, I like that a lot. I guess the thing for me as a former Lagoimera, but also somebody who always goes to the website first before I do that to try and find the information. I know I'm older. We worked that out recently at a workshop. But I find that it takes far too many clicks to try and find stuff on our website. Now, I get that plays into the technology comment that you're making. And so I'm just thinking the same about the searchable Lagoimas and how easy it is to navigate that and to pull the information up, because I only can speak for myself, although I suspect I can speak a little bit for Sam as another serial Lagoimera, that if we can find the information, we won't bother you.
Yeah. Look, and do you know what? That's exactly what we want too. We don't want you to bother us, with all due respect.
No.
But look, if we can't, this is information we should be able to put out into the environment, and we're never going to anticipate every question. But what we're trying to do at the moment is get our information in more accessible and easier to find, and that's the relationship between the communications and engagement team around how we tell our story. It includes making our website a little bit easier, and I will follow up to make sure that how you search for the Lagoima questions and answers, and I'll come back to you with that.
And I get that that's tied into technology deficit. So that's something else that obviously you can come to us about with proposals for how technology can assist with that process, which will help you achieve your goals. And I'm also pleased to see, and some people may not be surprised, I'm pleased to see an in-house legal and governance team, because I do know about the 6-minute units. I don't have nightmares anymore, but I do know about the 6-minute units, and I do know about the hourly rates. And if we can get good quality people, which we appear to have in here with knowledge of our organisation, then that has to be better for everybody. So that's a comment, not a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Concur, Tracy. And it's great. And, I don't think, if we're talking about Lagoima, it is time and money for us as an organisation, but also for people. And so, yeah, there is definitely an avenue of finding a better way of working together. And I have faith that the team are all over this. Sarah.
Yeah, how do we get by without our legal team?
We paid a lot of money.
Yeah. Jeepers. So I guess, in terms of being in a competitive market, how do we attract good people? We're paying the medium. What is it about our strategy that gets good people?
Look, one of the things that attracts people to Selwyn is the fact it's Selwyn. Yeah. We're the fastest growing district in the country, and that has some challenges, but it also has some benefit because some of the work that our teams get to do, it's the only work being done like this in the country. So that is one of our marketing propositions. We do a lot of work around making this a great culture and a safe work environment. We're doing more in that space, and word of mouth. There are good people here. I reflect on the fact that we still have a small council feel where you can walk down the hall and you can kind of know most people, but we're a medium to bigger size organisation now. And it's the culture here. One of the things that the Tāte Tīma survey reflects is that the biggest value is the people that they work with. That is one of the most valued things of coming to work here, is the people they get to sit next to walk beside, to do work with. So that speaks a lot to the place we've got here and the people you've got working for you.
I do want to add though, Sarah, forgive me Steve, but actually what we have heard through the Tāte Tīma survey, and you will get a presentation and a briefing on that in December, as that one of the areas that does frustrate staff is our salaries. Right. And I think that's come through in consecutive years, and that's something that we think very carefully about. I do as CEO, and Steve and the team are very conscious of that too. But we've got to be practical. That is a frequent issue that is raised.
Yeah, brilliant. Other brief question for Kath, I think. How is the biodiversity strategy set?
How is it set?
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Oh, I'll talk to Sophie. Don't worry.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Sophie can probably lean into that. She was, part of that, and I can also help you with that as part of. It was a committee that I sat on beforehand as well, and last council did some of that, so we can help you offline with that. Denise.
Oh, just quickly. I don't know if this is a statement or a question, but I have a worry about the Waikiri Kitua future Selwyn and the future towns. And this is a very Springs Ward-centric question, because I remember on those, on the days when we met and everything, there was promises of keeping the towns individual and, them not joining together. But then I look at the development that's happening and happened, and the fast tracking and the new RMA, etc. I wonder if we are setting the public up to promise them something that they can't have.
I think that might be, that's a really good question. I think what we might do is take that into the future briefing when we come back and talk to you about the area plans, because it'll also have a lot of bearing on what Emma and the team are doing around our district plan and what things the RMA are going to throw at us in the coming weeks. So if you're okay, we can take that offline, Denise.
Yeah. And I suppose in linking with that, and I don't want to go back to PC 69 continuously, but when the council came out to present about that, they talked about the Greater Christchurch planning and all the spatial plans and all the overlays of all the different district plans, and it just seemed like none of it applied. And I worry about the cost of all those different structures if then it's all going to be thrown out by the new RMA, and that's more of a worry than a question. Thank you.
It's a fair worry.
Yeah.
It's a real live issue. Denise is, we don't know what RMA is going to do when it lands, but all we can do is try and plan for what we're doing. But there will be area plan workshops come back to us where we can look at the components of those through the team. Samuel.
Look at you guys go. I just went along and found some of my OIAs that are publicly displayed now. So well done for anybody that didn't know. None had been published since 2019, I think was the last
Somewhere around there, yeah.
So that's awesome. Well done. I think that helps. Well, it expresses what we actually want, which is more transparency, and will save the team in the long run if you can find it. Waitakere ki tua future Selwyn area plans, and of those 900 people, have we yet discovered who are children and who are adults who submitted on that, or are we still? That's still all amalgamated.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Still amalgamated. We will. Yeah. I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And communications. If we were to halve our advertising budget, would the community even notice?
Look, that would be an interesting social experiment, wouldn't it? Because
last week, or it
Yeah.
might be this week, it's basically this Selwyn District Council Times and Big Red's advertorials in the middle.
there's a bit of look. There is the I think there is the advertising that goes into the Selwyn Times, but we do a number of other areas where we do advertise, and there is the cost of getting onto Facebook to make sure that our messages get out there. So there are costs, and we can certainly give you a bit more of a detailed breakdown about where we spend our money, how we spend it, and why we're spending it, and who we're trying to attract. Because you'll appreciate we've got a very diverse and very widespread community, and just going into the Selwyn Times won't cut it. We've got to go through multiple areas, and that's what the team are working on.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, around the country, councils actually are supporting a lot of local newspapers through paying for advertising. I'm sure you'll have seen that when councils withdraw because they're looking for cost savings, there's been a number of local newspapers that have raised concerns because it's surprising how many are actually reliant on council paid advertising, and it's really tricksy to try and find the balance. And as Steve is right, it's something that the team are thinking about and considering. And we are, I think, one of the main advertisers with Selwyn Times. So if we were to make some significant changes, there are some implications for that business that we would bring to council to think about.
It is one of those scenarios. People living in Selwyn don't really have a choice of an alternative company to pay rates to. Sort of have cornered the market over here, guys. So
I think what it is, I think actually
it's
what
notifiable.
what the advertising is that we're trying to cover all demographics, and we still have quite a traditional demographic in Selwyn as well that do read the newspaper, and so you can't just rely on digital advertising to reach people. We do need to do some type of print media advertising. And so, but yeah, I agree. There is a fine line in what we do and what we don't do. Yeah.
Would love to see the.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sophie.
Yeah, just on that point, I know some places where the local newspaper has fallen over, and the closest one they have to pay for instead to meet their requirements to put stuff in paid advertising is something like the Post. So for us, if we were advertising our legislative stuff in the press, would 10 times as much as the Selwyn Times? So it's not ideal, but we've got a decent deal by still having a local free paper. Anyway, my question was, on one of our slides, we've got resignations per group over 12 months. So the one above with the rolling 12-month average turnover rate specifically says that it excludes casuals and fixed term. Is that the same for the resignations one? Just asking because CSF looks very high, and I'm wondering how many of them are like sort of summer lifeguards and event staff.
Yes, great question. I probably can't answer that today, but what I'll do is we'll come back and answer that next week at Audit and Risk.
I mean, they are a large group, but it's that group where you've got quite a lot of teenagers who get the job for the summer and then go
absolutely.
to uni.
Yeah.
Get up.
Yeah, Aaron.
Just back on the comms, sort of turning Samuel's question around is not so much would people notice if it was missing, but do we do any assessment of what sort of communications is effective and what people like to hear about?
Yeah, we've got I guess the citizen or the customer survey gives us a bit of a sense of how well our community understands us. And our marketing team, and one of the slides we had in there that I worked out for this presentation to keep it tight, was we do have metrics around what are the platforms that get us the best bang for buck in terms of who reads us and where. But I can certainly, when we bring back a bit of a breakdown of that advertising, I can certainly also give a bit of a breakdown about what's working for us and what do they want to hear. And certainly I think you probably also can share us the stories from your experiences over the last 3 months about what you think the community needs to hear from us as well. And so we're keen to hear from that.
Yeah, that's good. I tend to avoid self-congratulatory stuff. Tell people about good events they can take part in, and come and get your rubbish bin clips and what's on at the library, that sort of stuff. But don't go, Selwyn Council's great at doing this, because that really rankles with me, and LG&Z are doing that at the moment, and it just makes me...
If it helps, Aaron, I've got a bit of a comms strategy that will sit with myself and with us. That'll be relatively cost effective and engaging for our community. So, look forward to progressing that. John.
Thanks to you both for a wonderful presentation, and I'm just looking forward with expectation to see who the new Selwyn Times wraparound poster person's going to be.
I can tell you that there's no budget in my budget for that, so unfortunately it won't be me and it won't be you. Not at this stage. Look, I know that we've been in this room for 8 hours, and I thank everyone for their full attendance and thoughtfulness into the briefings and the meeting that we've had today. And thank you to Steve and Kath for your ability to pivot with our agenda to make this work. So it's much appreciated from us. And yeah, we look forward to you bringing the other items that you have back to us in the briefing. So it's a thank you, everyone, for your time today.